Just imagine how it feels when your wife is ready to leave you for her own gain. Let me start from the beginning. The second her laughter stopped and dropped to a whisper, I felt it in my gut. Something was off. It was one of those thick late summer evenings where even the air feels like it's weighing you down. I was barefoot, standing in the hallway with her laptop charger in hand, the same one she'd begged me to grab before I left for the store. The front door was hanging open. I was supposed to be gone already. I hadn't planned to stop. Definitely hadn't planned to overhear anything. But the moment I heard her voice say, I can't fake it anymore. I don't love him. I stopped cold. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Barely breathed. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a slip. It was the kind of laugh that comes from someone who's just taken a heavy weight off their chest. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping iced tea with her sister. That same kitchen where we used to dance barefoot at midnight, when our favorite song surprised us on shuffle. That same spot where she cried after we lost the baby. The place I must have kissed her forehead 1,000 times, thinking it meant something to her, too. I don't even know why I'm still here, she said. Maybe guilt. Maybe I just feel sorry for him. My grip tightened around the charger. Not because I was mad, but because those words hit like confirmation. Confirmation of something I'd buried, too afraid to admit even to myself. I wasn't a partner anymore. I wasn't her husband. I was just some responsibility she couldn't bring herself to walk away from. I slowly backed away. Didn't make a sound. I set the charger gently on the stairs and walked out. She never noticed. An hour later, I got a text. Thanks, babe. I didn't answer. That night, I paced the floors. Told myself maybe it was just something she said in the moment. Maybe she didn't mean it. People vent, right? But deep down, I knew better. That wasn't venting. That was honesty finally finding a way out. For 5 days, I pretended everything was fine. Played the part of a devoted husband like it was my job. Made her breakfast. Kissed her goodbye. Sent her playlists. Asked how her day was. And every time she smiled at me, I saw something missing in her eyes. Something empty I'd probably ignored for years. On the 6th night, I said the 6 words I never thought would come out of my mouth. I think we should end it. She didn't flinch. Didn't act surprised. She just looked at me and said, okay. No argument. No questions. Just okay. Like she'd been waiting for me to do it, so she wouldn't have to. The silence that followed was louder than any fight we'd ever had. I packed that night. Quietly. No drama. No grand goodbye. Just took my toothbrush, a few books, and 1 suitcase of clothes. The one she hadn't picked out for me. Then I left. And for 2 whole years, I stayed gone. But last Thursday, while picking up some takeout, I turned around in line, and there she was. Danielle, wearing the necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary, holding a toddler, staring at me like I'd just stepped out of a ghost story. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mouth opened slightly, but the words didn't come. I just stood there, frozen in that narrow, fluorescent-lit corner of a Thai place, while the woman who once meant everything to me stood 5 feet away, holding a child like I was the one who disappeared without a word. She looked older. Not in a bad way. Just worn. Like life had finally handed her some things she couldn't avoid anymore. And that little girl clinging to her shoulder. She had the same curl in her hair Danielle used to tuck behind her ear when she was nervous. She looked up at me with wide eyes like I didn't belong in the dream she was having. Then Danielle said my name. Soft, like it might hurt if she said it too loud. Caleb. I blinked. Couldn't move. Nobody around us seemed to notice. The guy behind the counter just kept calling out order numbers like nothing was happening. But for me, time cracked open. 2 years collapsed into a single moment. All I could get out was, hey. Not, how are you? Not, is that your daughter? Just, hey. Because anything more would have opened a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. She stepped closer. Can we talk? Everything in me wanted to turn around. Run. Protect the peace I'd built in the silence. But the way she looked at me, it wasn't familiar. Danielle used to wear expressions like armor, sarcasm, boredom, detachment. But right then, she looked raw, tired, almost sorry. I gave a small nod. No words. Just a gesture that felt like I was agreeing to something I couldn't take back. She asked if we could sit in her car. It was parked out front. Said her daughter, would fall asleep with her bottle. I followed without a word, still in a daze. Just watched her buckle the little girl into her car seat with gentle hands. The girl smiled at me. I smiled back. And something inside me cracked just a little more. We sat up front, engine idling, baby murmuring in the back. She turned to me, finally. I never thought I'd see you again, she said. I almost didn't believe it was you. You look different, I muttered. She bit her lip, paused. Her name is Lena. That gave me one answer, but not the one I really needed. I didn't ask who the father was. Didn't ask how soon after I left she got pregnant. I didn't need to. The answer was written all over her face. It was complicated, messy, probably painful. Then she said something that knocked the wind right out of me. I didn't mean it when I said I didn't love you. I turned my head toward her slowly, looked her in the eyes for the first time since we sat down. What? She shook her head, like she'd been holding that sentence in for years and hated how it sounded now that it was out. That night, in the kitchen, you heard me, didn't you? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I was angry, she said. Not at you. At myself. I felt stuck. Like I wasn't the person I wanted to be. And I blamed you for that. Because you were steady. You were kind. And I wasn't. So instead of growing up, I pushed you away. Silence stretched between us. She kept going. After you left, I thought I'd feel free. But I just felt empty. Like I cut out the only real part of me and left behind all the noise. I figured time would fix it. But it didn't. And as much as I wanted to yell, to ask why she waited 2 years to tell me all this, I couldn't. I wanted to ask her where that self-awareness had been back when I was curled up in a room barely big enough for a bed, crying myself to sleep and wondering what I'd done to deserve it. But all I managed to say was, why now? Her hands shook a little as she answered. Because I saw you. And I knew if I didn't tell you the truth right then, I'd never forgive myself. I glanced over at Lena, fast asleep, totally unaware of the wreckage that wrapped around her life like tangled wire. And that's when Danielle dropped the last bomb. She doesn't have a dad, she said. He left. Said he wasn't ready. I've been raising her on my own. And some nights, Caleb, I lie there thinking maybe I deserve that. My throat went dry. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. What I felt was worse, pity. And under that, something even more dangerous, curiosity. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there in the passenger seat of her car, breathing in that soft floral air freshener, listening to Lena's steady breathing from the back. My hands were stiff from how tightly I'd been clenching them. My mind was spinning like a storm. But I couldn't move. I just stayed there. Danielle stared down at the steering wheel, her hands resting in her lap. Her voice had cracked when she said she deserved it. And now she was doing that thing she always did when she felt vulnerable, pressing her thumbnail into her palm like she was trying to hold herself together through the pain. I wanted to yell. I wanted to say, you think you deserve this? I begged you to open up. I gave you everything I had. And when the moment came to be real with me, you looked me dead in the eye and let me go like I was just one more item crossed off a to-do list. But instead, I just stared out the window. 2 years. That's what stood between us now. 2 years of silence. 2 years of trying to remember who I was without her. And the fact that she was the one who broke that silence. Not with a letter, not even a call, but by running into me by pure chance. Made everything feel unfinished. Eventually, I asked, so what do you want from me? Her answer came way too fast. I don't want anything. I looked over at her, trying to read her face. Then why are you telling me all this now? She swallowed. Because I'm not trying to rewrite the past. I just want you to know, you were never the problem. I was. And that should have made me feel vindicated. Should have brought some sort of peace, or closure, or satisfaction. But all it did was make me feel tired. Tired from spending years dragging myself through recovery, only for her to show up now, holding the truth like it was some kind of parting gift. I'm not the same guy anymore, I said quietly. She nodded. I can tell. You seem more grounded. Stronger. I hated hearing that. And at the same time, I kind of liked it. What hurt more was realizing that some part of me had been waiting for her to say those exact words. You used to say I was too sensitive, I told her. That I took things too personally. Remember that? She nodded again, slower this time. Yeah, I used that as a smiled. Because as long as you were the one feeling things, I didn't have to deal with my own. The car got quiet again. Lena shifted in her sleep, still holding onto her bottle like it was the only solid thing in the world. Then Danielle asked something I didn't expect. Do you remember the night we danced in the kitchen? After that storm knocked out the power? Of course I did. I remembered it in full detail. We lit candles, poured wine, and slow danced to a song we didn't even know the lyrics to. It was one of the rare, honest moments between us. No pretending. Just two people swaying in the dark, like they still believed in forever. I think about that night a lot, she whispered. It was the last time I felt like I deserved you. That hit hard, right in the center of my chest. I turned to her, confused. Then why'd you throw it away? Her answer knocked the air out of me. Because I thought I needed chaos to feel alive. There it was. The truth, buried beneath layers of regret and carefully worded explanations. She hadn't left because I was dull. She left because I was steady, safe, predictable. And for someone like her, someone hooked on emotional storms, love without pain didn't feel like love at all. I felt a wave of anger rising. Because I wasn't just some phase she had to grow out of. I wasn't a test of how calm she could be. I was a man who loved her, fully, completely, and I deserved more than this late-night confession in a parked car outside a restaurant. I'm not your safety net, Danielle, I said, my voice barely steady. And I'm not the guy you get to circle back to just because the world finally scared you. She nodded again, this time slower, like she really got what I meant. Maybe more than I even realized. I know, she said softly. I wanted you to hear it from me, before you heard it from someone else. That stopped me cold. What's that supposed to mean? Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, then back to mine. Just promise me you'll keep an open mind. If anything comes up, people might say things. I narrowed my eyes. What people? She hesitated. There were complications. With my ex. With Lena's birth. With a lot of things. Just promise me you'll remember what I told you today. The way her voice dropped gave me chills. This wasn't just a confession anymore. This was something else. A warning. And it hit me. What I thought was the end of our story 2 years ago. That might have only been the beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just laid there, staring up at the ceiling. The old fan above me groaned with every slow spin, and Danielle's words kept echoing in my mind. People might say things. Complications. Promise me you'll remember what I told you today. What did she mean by that? What people? What was she scared I'd find out? It felt like she'd cracked a door open just wide enough to show me I was in a different room, and then slammed it shut again. I tossed and turned all night. My thoughts weren't just about her. They were about Lena. That little girl had my nose, my ears, even my smile. And the worst part? Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. By the time morning came, curiosity was gnawing at me like rust on metal. I told myself I wasn't going to get involved. I wasn't going to dig through her past or go looking for something I couldn't handle. But if that was true, then why did I open that old storage box? Why did I pull out the manila envelope marked divorce finalization? Why did I start flipping through those papers like some desperate amateur detective? At first, everything looked normal. Just the usual documents. My signature. Her signature. Tucked near the back, stapled to a few pages I barely remembered, was something that stopped me in my tracks. A note from her lawyer about adjusting prenatal health insurance. I read it again, just to be sure. Prenatal. I sat there frozen. She never told me she was pregnant. Not once. No hints. No slips. Nothing. I closed the folder slowly and let my hands rest on top of it, my fingers tingling. The truth hit me like a freight train. I had coasted through that entire divorce like a man underwater. Too emotionally wrecked to think clearly. Too broken to question anything. I didn't fight her on a thing, gave her the house, the furniture, even let her take the espresso machine without blinking. But now, sitting in my tiny apartment 2 years later, it hit me. I might have overlooked something that actually mattered. I needed answers. But not from her. Not yet. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 2 years, her sister, Maya. She picked up after 3 rings. Her voice sounded tired, cautious. Caleb. Hey, Maya. Yeah, I know it's strange. But do you have a minute? There was a short pause. Is this about Danielle? My heart started to pound. Why would you think that? Because she called me yesterday, she said. Told me she ran into you. Said she was shaken up. Shaken? Why? She said she told you the truth. Or some of it. That dried my throat right up. Some of it. Maya sighed on the other end of the line. Look, I don't want to be in the middle of this. If she hasn't told you everything, it's not really my place to say. Maya, I said, and my voice came out firmer than I meant. Was Lena born before or after the divorce? Another long pause. Caleb, you really need to talk to Danielle about this. That's not an answer. She didn't tell you? Maya asked, a little too surprised. She promised me she would. My voice cracked. So she was pregnant when she left me? Maya let out a shaky breath. Yes, but it's not what you're thinking. I leaned hard against the kitchen counter, trying to keep my knees from buckling. Then what is it? There was a silence so thick I could hear her breathing through it. Danielle doesn't know for sure who the father is. My mind went blank. She what? She was seeing someone, Maya said carefully, toward the end of your marriage. She told me it didn't mean anything, that it was already over. She said she just needed to feel something. You two were growing apart, and she panicked. Made some bad choices. Then she found out she was pregnant after you'd moved out. The timing was close. Too close. She thought about telling you, but she said she didn't want to trap you in all the uncertainty. I couldn't breathe. My lungs wouldn't work. So instead, she let me leave thinking I was the problem, that I had failed her, that I hadn't been enough. She was scared, Maya said, quieter this time. But yeah, she should have told you. I couldn't stand anymore. I slid to the cold tile floor, my back against the cabinets. The chill did nothing to cool the heat burning through my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. It felt like robbery. She'd taken something from me, my right to know, my right to choose, my right to be a father, if that's even what I was. I didn't say another word. I hung up. And for the first time in 2 years, sadness wasn't the dominant feeling. I felt anger. Not the kind that boils over and explodes. This was colder, calculated. The kind that sits inside your chest like coals, whispering, she doesn't get to keep this secret anymore. I'd spent 2 years patching my life back together with duct tape and denial. Now it was time to tear off the tape and look at the damage. It's a strange feeling, realizing your past might not just be a lie, but a version of the truth someone else decided you were allowed to have. I didn't leave my apartment that night. Didn't eat. Didn't sleep. I just sat there on the kitchen floor, cross-legged like some guy waiting for a phone that was never going to ring. And I thought about every conversation, every interaction, every little red flag from that final year together. And suddenly, all of it seemed suspicious. The late nights at the office. The way she'd snap when I asked something simple. Her always locking her phone. That slight pause, just a beat too long, when I told her I loved her. I had ignored it all. Wrote it off as stress. As life. As what marriage looks like when you're not 25 anymore. But now I knew better. Now I knew I had been the guy she kept in the background. Her backup plan. While she chased something she didn't even have the courage to admit she wanted. The next morning, I walked straight into a drugstore and bought a paternity test. No hesitation. No second guessing. And strangely, I didn't feel embarrassed. Which was rare for me. I've spent most of my life marinated in self-blame. But that morning, standing in line clutching that test like it was a ticking bomb, I didn't feel small. I felt like I was finally reclaiming a piece of my own story. Of course, I couldn't exactly show up at her place and swab a child's cheek without warning. So I sent her a text. Just one sentence. We need to talk somewhere private. She replied within minutes. Gave me an address. Said Lena would be with Maya for a few hours. I drove there without turning on the radio. Just the sound of my own breathing and my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. They were shaking. Not from fear, but from the pressure of a question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. She opened the door before I could knock. This time, she looked different. No makeup. No mask. Just Danielle, tired, raw, real. For the first time in years, she looked like someone who had stopped running from the consequences and started living with them. Come in, she said. Her voice didn't carry the sharpness it once did. It was softer now. Not fragile, just honest. Like someone who'd finally let go of pretending to be indestructible. I stepped inside. She led me to the kitchen. There, in the corner, was the same model of espresso machine I'd given up during the divorce. I glanced at it. She caught the look. I never use it, she said. It just sits there. I nodded, but didn't respond. My focus wasn't on old memories anymore. It was on the box inside my jacket pocket. I pulled it out and placed it on the table between us. Her face went pale. Caleb, she started. I need to know, I said quietly. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm not here to cause a scene. I told her, voice low but steady. But if there's even the slightest chance Lena's mine, I deserve to know. She closed her eyes briefly, like she needed a second to gather herself. Then she opened them again and said, okay. A beat passed. Okay, I'll get a sample. I want to do it myself, I added. No tricks. No games. She gave a small nod, and for a split second, I thought she might cry. But instead, she turned around and quietly left the room. When she came back a few minutes later, She was holding a small sealed bag with a cotton swab inside. "I helped her do it this morning," she said softly. "I figured you'd ask." I stared at her. "Then why didn't you just tell me the truth from the beginning?" She looked down at her hands, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I didn't know what the truth was. And because I was scared. I still am." It was the first thing she'd said in years that I actually believed. I took the sample and packed it with the test kit. She offered to split the cost, but I shook my head. "If this turns out the way I think it will," I said, "you've already taken enough." The next 4 days were pure hell. I went to work, sat in meetings, stared at spreadsheets, but my brain was nowhere near any of it. My thoughts were stuck in a loop, circling back to those eyes. Her eyes, that looked just a little too much like mine. Then the email came. I opened it with trembling hands, clicked the link, and there it was. Probability of paternity, 99. 97%. My heart skipped. I read it again. And again. I couldn't believe it. I was a father. I had been a father for 2 years, and nobody had told me. I dropped my head into my hands and cried, not just from the pain, but from the weight of what I'd missed. 2 birthdays. 2 Christmas mornings. Her first laugh. Her first words. Her first steps. All of it gone. Not lost to circumstance, but taken. Taken by choice. By Danielle's choice. But this time, the decision about what came next, that was mine to make. I didn't sleep at all that night. Not a second. I sat at the edge of my bed, the glow of the paternity report still lighting up my screen. My thumb hovered over the forward button, but I didn't press it. I couldn't. Some truths aren't meant to be texted or emailed. They carry too much weight. They need to be said, to be heard. At 6:30 the next morning, I was already in the car. No plan. No speech. Just one need. To look Danielle in the eye and ask her how she ever thought I didn't deserve to know my own child. She opened the door before I could knock. And from the look on her face, I knew she already knew. Whether she had taken her own test or just trusted her gut, I couldn't tell. But her eyes went straight to the envelope in my hand. "She's mine," I said. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, folding her arms like she was trying to hold herself together. "I know," she whispered. The silence between us cracked open, jagged and deep. I waited for something, an apology, an explanation, even just a word. But all I got was the quiet truth of a woman who'd rehearsed every sentence and knew none of them would soften the blow. "I wanted to tell you so many times," she said, "but I was scared you'd hate me." I stepped forward. "I already did, Danielle. For years. I hated how you looked at me like I was invisible. How you shut me out. How you gave your smiles to strangers but couldn't say goodnight to me anymore." I held up the envelope between us. "But this isn't about hate. This is about a little girl who doesn't even know her father's name." Danielle's voice cracked. Sometimes she calls someone else daddy. He's not around anymore. But when she watches cartoons, she points at the screen and says, "Daddy," like she's pretending. That broke me in half. "Why didn't you tell her?" I asked. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "Because I didn't know if I could handle it. If you said you didn't want to be in her life." I stared at her, stunned. "So your solution was to erase me? To create a world where I didn't even exist?" She didn't argue, just looked down, the weight of her choices pressing into her shoulders. "I missed her first birthday, Danielle. Her first steps. Her first everything. Do you get that?" Tears welled in her eyes. But I couldn't bring myself to care, not after everything I'd lost. "I grieved the chance to be a father," I told her. "Because you made me believe I never had it." "I know," she whispered. "No," I snapped. "You don't." And then, out of nowhere, she said something I wasn't prepared for. "Do you want to meet her?" Everything inside me froze. "She's upstairs," she added. "Still asleep." I felt like a ghost in my own life. Part of me wanted to run, to disappear again. But another part, the part that had been living numb for 2 years, knew this was a moment I'd regret walking away from forever. "I don't want her to be confused," I said. "If I come in, I'm not walking away again. You understand that?" Danielle nodded slowly. "I want that. I think she deserves that." We climbed the stairs together, each step feeling like it was cracking open something I'd buried for years. The door to her room was slightly ajar, warm pink light spilling through the blinds. Inside, Lena was curled up in a sea of stuffed animals, sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with every soft breath. Just seeing her made my throat tighten. Danielle knelt beside the bed and gently rubbed her back. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "someone's here to meet you." Lena stirred. Her eyes blinked open, and she looked at me. Those same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. She stared at me for a long moment. That raw, curious look toddlers give when they're trying to figure out the world. And then, she smiled. "Hi." That one word shattered me. I dropped to my knees, unable to hold it together. "Hi," I whispered back, my voice already breaking. "I've waited so long to say that to you." She giggled and reached toward me, holding out a small blue stuffed rabbit. I took it with shaking hands. And in that moment, I didn't just meet my daughter. I met a version of myself I thought had died years ago, the one who still believed he had something left to give. But nothing in life ever comes back untouched. Nothing rewinds without leaving a mark. And just when I thought the hardest part was behind me, another truth surfaced. One Danielle never intended for me to find. The morning I met Lena felt like the first time in years that the world finally slowed down for the right reasons. After she handed me that little blue rabbit, she didn't say much. She just sat there watching me, tilting her head and blinking up with those same long lashes I remembered from childhood photos of myself. She had my nose, Danielle's chin, and something else, something I couldn't even name. We didn't need to talk. She crawled into my lap like she'd done it 100 times already. No hesitation, no fear. Like part of her had been waiting for this moment just as long as I had. I stayed for hours. We ate cereal at the little table in the kitchen corner. She insisted on pouring the milk herself. It splashed all over the place, and I laughed. Danielle laughed too, though hers felt tighter, like it came more from nerves than joy. She kept glancing at me like she was half expecting me to vanish. Or explode. Or both. Later, I helped Lena build a block tower in the living room while Danielle hovered in the background, watching, unsure of where she fit in this new picture she never thought would be painted. I didn't hold that against her. This was uncharted territory. We were building something fragile, layer by layer, on top of years of silence and regret. No one gives you a map for this kind of thing. That afternoon, when Lena went down for a nap, I stood up to leave. I didn't want to. I just needed some space. Not from her. From the weight of everything. "I'll call you," I told Danielle. She nodded and walked me to the door. For once, she seemed unsure of what to say. "You were good with her," she said, her voice soft. "I've been good at a lot of things," I replied. "But you didn't give me the chance." She looked like she wanted to push back, but the words didn't come. I left. But apparently, fate wasn't finished with me yet. That night, I got a call from Maya. I hadn't expected to hear from her again so soon. Her voice sounded different, tight, rushed, urgent. "There's something I need to give you," she said. "I should have done it years ago, but I didn't know what to do with it. I think you're finally ready now." She wouldn't explain over the phone, just asked me to come over. When I got there, she handed me a leather-bound journal wrapped in a plastic bag. It looked like it had been carried around for years, but barely touched. The corners were frayed. The cover was cracked. "She left it at my place after the divorce," Maya said. I didn't want to throw it away, but I couldn't read it either. I figured maybe it should go to you. I took it home and just sat with it on the couch for a long while, staring. 20 minutes passed before I even opened the thing. The first few pages were messy, random thoughts, fragments of poems, venting in scribbled loops. I almost stopped there. But then I found an entry dated 4 days before she filed for divorce. "I think I'm pregnant. I haven't told Caleb. I'm not even sure it's his, but part of me hopes it is. Maybe then I won't feel so guilty for how badly I've hurt him." I stopped breathing. I turned the page. He's been so kind lately, making me coffee, offering to do my laundry. I can't even look him in the eye. He doesn't know. I cheated. Not once. Not just with one person. It wasn't physical at first. It started with messages, then drinks, then lies. I thought it would fill whatever emptiness I was carrying around. But it didn't. Now I'm just empty. And a coward. I sat there frozen. My stomach churned. That journal felt like a cinder block in my lap. This wasn't one mistake. It wasn't just that things had drifted between us. She'd lived 2 different lives. One with me, one in the dark. And when it came time to face it all, she chose the exit. I kept reading. If the baby is his, maybe that means I'm not all bad. Maybe it means I still wanted something with him. But I can't face him. I can't stand the way he'd look at me if he ever knew. Entry after entry, it was all the same. Guilt, confusion, fear. Not love. Not hope. Not even an attempt to fix what she broke, just regret scribbled on paper. I closed the journal. Tears stung my eyes. She had never planned to tell me. Not any of it. She was ready to wipe me out completely. To raise Lena in a carefully controlled world where I didn't exist. Not because I was dangerous or unreliable, but because facing me meant facing herself. And she wasn't ready for that. I checked the clock. Midnight. I should have gone to bed. I should have just let it be. But instead, I picked up the phone and called Danielle. She answered on the second ring. "Caleb," she said. I read it, I told her. "The journal." Silence followed. "Lena's mine," I continued. "And I'm going to be in her life. But you and me? We're not going back. Not ever. Do you understand that?" "Yes," she whispered. "I'll be her father," I said. "But I'm not your second chance." And I meant every word. Because love might survive a lot, but it doesn't survive betrayal buried in silence. 2 weeks passed after that call. Quiet ones. No shouting. No blow-ups. Just space. The kind you need when the damage runs deep and healing has to start in stillness. I didn't talk to Danielle for several days after that. I needed room to process everything, to let it all sink in. I had to remember who I was before the lies, and who I could still become after them. But through it all, one thing stayed rock solid: my commitment to Lena. The moment I knew she was mine, everything shifted. The pain, the self-blame, the years I'd spent unraveling in silence, hiding behind therapy sessions and forcing smiles, they finally made sense. They weren't wasted. They were leading me here. I hadn't lost everything. I'd found something I never knew was even mine. My daughter. That first weekend, I took Lena to the zoo. It wasn't a big place, but to her, it was another planet. She clung to my hand the whole time, pointed at everything, fed goats, tried to mimic the monkeys, and asked me if we could come back every single day forever. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because her little voice sang, "We" made my chest ache in the best way possible. On the way home, we stopped for ice cream. She smeared chocolate all over her cheeks. I kept handing her napkins, and she kept grinning like she was proud of the mess. That's when she said it for the first time. "Dad." Not Caleb, not Mr. Just Dad. I didn't react right away. My brain short-circuited. Then I smiled, nodded, and said, "Yeah, sweetie," like it was the most normal thing in the world. But inside, I was breaking open. In the best way. Danielle kept her word. She didn't interfere. Didn't try to fix things between us or confuse Lena with stories about the past. She respected the lines I drew. Gave me space to show up for Lena the way I needed to. A few days later, she sent me a handwritten note. I still haven't thrown it away. It said, "You were always the better person. Thank you for being the father she deserves, even when I didn't deserve you." I never replied. I didn't need to, because it wasn't about her anymore. It was about what came next. A few months later, I filed for official custody. Joint, for stability. But I moved into a bigger place. One with a room just for Lena. I painted the walls a soft yellow. Let her pick out sheets with little suns and clouds. She started calling it Daddy's Sky Room. Every Sunday, we made pancakes. She burned most of them. We ate them anyway. I picked up journaling again, not to vent or bleed, but to hold on to gratitude. I even reached out to a few friends I'd pushed away after the divorce. Told them the truth. The full truth. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't ashamed. I didn't feel broken. I felt rebuilt. That spring, Lena turned 4. We threw a small party in the park. I watched her chase bubbles across the grass, laughing like the world had no weight at all. And in that moment, it hit me. She didn't just rescue me from my past. She gave me a future. Not one haunted by a failed marriage or full of unsaid things, but a life filled with bedtime stories, crayon drawings, and little hands reaching for mine in parking lots. So here's the truth. I lost a wife, but I found a daughter. And honestly, I think I came out ahead. Because now, for the first time in my life, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. With her. With hope. With purpose. And maybe this is the story I was always meant to tell.